Now that we have our player walking around the world, let's start creating the objects that our player will interact with in the world. I'm going to start by creating a hammer, and I'm going to go to my browser and let's search for hammer, and we're going to use this model here. I'm going to click on it, import it into my game. There's our hammer. Just going to move it around here. Okay. And I also have here ready-made a sprite that we will use in our inventory, a 2D sprite of this hammer. Just going to drag it into the project and set it as a sprite. Click apply. Great. Now back to my hammer, I will apply to it the tag item. So let's create a new tag item, and our hammer will get the item tag. And now, since we're going to have many objects in our world with a lot of information and a lot of data, we are going to create scriptable objects to store this data. So instead of storing it in a game object in the scene and consume memory with that, we're going to create scriptable objects that we can reference when needed. And so we're going to use a lot of scriptable objects in this project. So I'm going to create a folder called scriptable objects. And inside this folder, I'm going to create a C# script called item. I'm going to open it up. And the first thing I'm going to do on this item script is change it from mono behavior to scriptable object. And then add on top of my class declaration in brackets, create asset menu so it shows up on my editor. Now I'm going to remove start and update, and here I will start to declare the variables that my item will require. And we'll start with item name, and then a boolean can pick up, and then a string called look at text, which is the text that's going to be shown when I do the look at action in the object. Then a pickup text, which is the text that's going to show up when I pick up the object, if any. And actually let's do it first, the ID, the unique ID of the object. And then, so let's say that perhaps I want my player to be in possession of other objects before picking this one up. So I'm going to create a required item IDs list in order to prevent my character from picking up an object before it's time. Then I will have a target nav point, which is the point where the player will walk to when he wants to interact with the object. And finally, a sprite, inventory sprite. Okay, I think that should be all we need on our item. Let's get back to Unity and let's create our first scriptable object item called hammer. So our hammer, since it's first one, the ID is going to be 1. The item name is hammer. Can pick up? Yes, you can pick up the hammer. Look at text. Let's say it's hammer time. Should I pick it up? And pick up text. Let's pick something like cool. Now I want to bash something, so that's a tip for our player to use the hammer in something. Now, required item IDs, I'm going to leave it empty because I don't have any any items that I need to have before picking up the hammer. And then before continue setting up, let's get back to the hammer, and we're going to add to the hammer a sphere collider first of all, that we're going to use to detect if the character has clicked on the hammer. So let's increase the radius like this and change the position. Let's make it a little bit bigger to make it easy for our character to pick it up. And I'm also going to add a child game object to my hammer called target nav point, and I'm gonna add a gizmo to it because since it's an empty game object, and I'm gonna place it here. So this is where our character is going to move to when he clicks on the hammer, because remember, our movement is working by clicking on the nav mesh and going to the point, but we're clicking on an object, we're not clicking on the nav mesh itself. So I still need to know where to move my my character, and that's what the target nav point is going to be used for. I'm going to go back to my hammer script object, set the target nav point to. Oh, of course, we cannot set the target nav point here because the scriptable object is not in the scene. So we need to set it up later on a different place, and that's okay. And then we can set the inventory sprite to the hammer sprite that we have imported, which is just it's just basically a 2D rendition of our hammer, as you can see it here. Great. So now we have our scriptable object, but I'm also going to create a item controller script. And this item controller script, let's open it up. Oh, I created another scriptable object, so let's delete this. Create C# script item controller. Let's open up Visual Studio and open our item controller script, and over here I just going to remove the update. I'll have a reference to the item scriptable object, and over here I'm going to set the target nav point as GameObject.transform.find target nav point dot game object. So now I am finally saving the reference to the target nav point on my scriptable object. Okay, so it's compiling, and if we run, there's not a whole lot happening yet. I have a hammer, I can still walk around the world, and if we take a look at our hammer, it's just there. But in the next videos, we'll start to set up actions towards this object.